Shalom, my friends. Welcome to Weekly Parsha with Yehuda Yisrael. This week's Parsha is Parshat Emor. I believe this was my younger brother's bar mitzvah Parsha. Anyway, so the Lord said to Moshe, "Speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, let none of you defile himself for a dead person among his people." So it's just giving more laws regarding purity. And except for a relative who was close to him, his mother, his father, his daughter, or his brother, and of his virgin sister who is close to him, who is not yet with a man lying for her, he shall defile himself. Interesting. We can look at these commentaries in more detail if you want to look at that. But a husband shall not defile himself for a wife who causes his desecration while she is among his people. They shall not make bald patches on their heads, nor shall they shave the edge of their beard, right? So this is where you have a lot of people who have longer beards. Nor shall they make cuts in their flesh. Okay. They shall be holy to their God, and they shall not desecrate their God's name, for they offer fire offerings up to the Lord, a food offering to God, so they shall be holy. Okay, now it's talking about they shall not marry a woman who is a prostitute or is desecrated. They shall not marry a woman who is divorced from her husband, for he, the Cohen, is holy to God. So this is speaking concerning, right, the Levitical priests as far as their sanctity, right? So it says that, so actually I think there was a last name, Azule. I don't know if this is true, but some people say that it's an acronym for the prohibitions for Kohanim, where they're not allowed to marry divorcees and, women who are not very stringent in their moral character, so to speak, right? So yeah, it's very specific to. Now this is interesting. What I wanted to reflect on here is that a lot of people say like Jews aren't really Jews, right? Ashkenazi Jews can't really be Jews or something silly like that, right? What's interesting is that when it comes to the Cohen line, right, you have plenty of Ashkenazi Jews with the last name of Cohen. You have Sephardic Jews, you have Mizrahi Jews. We all have this Cohen surname in common. And according to our tradition, right, according to the Torah, a Cohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee. And even the rabbis put an extra stringency so that so that the Kohanim don't marry converts. So since we have preserved people among the Kohanim who are followers of the Torah, you would understand that from generation to generation, they would not be marrying converts. So we have a preserved lineage going back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, especially through the Kohanim, right? So that's important to recognize, right? You shall sanctify him, for he offers up the food offering of your God. He shall be holy to you. I, the Lord, who sanctifies him, holy, right? So then it says, if a Cohen's daughter becomes desecrated through adultery, she desecrates her father. Oh, goodness, that's that's a severe punishment. So the Cohen who is elevated above his fathers, upon whose head the anointment oil has been poured, or who has been inaugurated to wear garments, he shall not leave his hair unshorn and rend his garments. He shall not come upon any dead body. So you have laws for Kohanim not to walk in certain parts of the cemetery, right? That's something that Kohanim observe to this day. Oh, here's the verse, Azule, right, where it says, a widow, a divorcee, a woman who is desecrated, or a prostitute shall not marry these. Only a virgin of his people he shall take as a wife. Right, so I think that's where Azulay comes from. The surname Azulay, which is a Sephardic surname. I don't know if there's a lot of truth to it or not, but Cohen for sure. We know that Cohen is definitely a Levitical priestly surname. I don't think that's up for debate. So Leviticus 21, keep going. Aaron and his offspring, anyone throughout their generations who has a defect shall not offer up his God's food, right? So basically, like, prohibitions for these are specific to Levites, right? I think at the beginning I wasn't quite making that distinction, but yeah, this is very specific to Levites or Kohanim, descendants of Aaron, talking about physical defects. Yeah, you can get into more detail with that. Basically, you're not supposed to have physical defects if you are a Cohen and you are doing service to Hashem. So that it's just describing different ways of sanctifying and differentiating between the holy and the impure. So then, more sanctification. Don't desecrate my name. Say throughout your generations. Don't defile God, basically, right? Any man of Aaron's offspring who has tzaret or has a discharge, he shall not eat of the holy sacrifices until he cleanses himself. Okay, fine. Great, wonderful. A man who touches a creeping creature through which he becomes unclean, or a person through whom he becomes unclean, whatever is uncleanliness, the person who touches it shall remain unclean until evening. Okay, so it's just describing cleanliness laws and how to deal with these types of things. Don't eat a carcass that was torn, thereby becoming unclean through it. Don't bear sin by eating it. So, okay, fine. So, no non-Cohen may eat holy things. A Cohen's resident and his hireling may not eat holy things. Okay, so saying that these are specific for the Cohen. And if a Cohen acquires a person acquisition through his money, he may eat of it, and those born of his house, they may eat of his food. If a Cohen's daughter is married to a non-Cohen, she may no longer be separated, may eat of the separated holy things, the truma, right? From what be truma. So that's, I guess a Cohen who marries a non-Cohen loses that perk. Okay. But if the Cohen's daughter becomes widowed or divorced, and she has no offspring, she may return to her father's household as in her youth and eat her father's food, but no non-Cohen may eat of it. Fascinating. So she kind of reverts back to that status after her husband dies. This is I didn't realize this. This is something that really changes things for me. What it proves is that the woman's status is dependent on her father only in the event that she's not married. Once she marries to another tribe, her tribal status completely changes. But once that husband passes away, then she reverts back to her tribal status of her father. Fascinating. So that can be used to refute, right, arguments that Christians would have regarding, Jesus supposedly having the tribal status of his mother or whatever, because, through the biological, whatever, the genealogy thing. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to keep in your back pocket to demonstrate that tribal heritage goes exclusively through the father and not through the mother. Because clearly a mother's status changes based on who she's married to or not, or a woman. So if a man unintentionally eats what is holy, he shall add a fifth of it and give the Cohen the holy thing. Interesting. Okay, fine. They shall not desecrate the holy things of the children of Israel, thereby bringing themselves upon iniquity when they eat holy things. I am the Lord who sanctifies them. Okay, great. So moving on. So, saying any man whatsoever from the house of Israel, from strangers among Israel, who offers up his sacrifice for any of their vows or any other donations that they may offer up as a burnt offering, it shall be favorable to you. So basically just talking about sacrifices, peace offerings, vows, except, okay, so it says if a man offers up a peace offering to the Lord for declaring a vow or donation from cattle from the flock to be accepted, it shall be unblemished, it shall not have any defect on it. So just stipulations for animals that they should be perfect in their, basically that they have to, there's certain standards that you have to meet in order to make a sacrifice, is basically the gist of this. And from the hand of a Gentile you shall not offer up as food for your God any of these blemished animals, for their injury is upon them. There's a defect on them. They will not be accepted for you. Interesting. You shall not slaughter an ox and its offspring on the same day. When an ox or a sheep or a goat is going to remain its mother for 7 days, and the 8th day onwards it shall be accepted as a sacrifice. Okay, so it's kind of like humane rules about that. When you slaughter a thanksgiving offering to the Lord, you shall slaughter it so that it be acceptable to you. It shall be eaten on that day. Do not leave it over until the morning of the Lord. Keep the commandments. Don't desecrate the name of Hashem, right? God took you out of Egypt. Awesome. Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say, the Lord's appointed holy days that you shall assign as holy occasions. These are my appointed holy days. So now it's talking about Shabbat as a holy day. And then it talks about Passover in the first month on the 14th of the month, Nisan. I'm going to do another thing about Rosh Hashanah and how it is biblically shown to be the beginning of the year in a different sense, and that it's not some rabbinic nonsense that rabbis made up. It has precedence in the Tanakh. I'll get into that later, though, because a lot of Christians make these silly arguments that rabbis made up Rosh Hashanah and it has no evidence of being in the Tanakh. If you want me to make a video on that, I will. I can. It'll be a fun one. So fine. So now it's talking about the festival of Passover, right? 7 days. And the first day and the last day, you do not perform any labor. And then it says, speaking of the Omer offering, right? This is what we do on the second day of Passover. We start counting, or the second night of Passover, there's when we start counting the Omer and the wave offering, right? So this is what leads up to what I guess Christians refer to as first fruits or Pentecost, I think is what they call it. So it says, you shall count yourselves from the morrow of the rest day, from the day that you bring the Omer of the wave offering, 7 weeks, they shall be complete. So we understand that on the first day after the first holy day of Passover, right? How would you know this information if not for rabbinic tradition, which we have kept for over the past 2,000 years and beyond? And yes, I am counting the Omer as we speak, right? So we like to make sure that we keep in line with these laws. Every day we count the Omer. Yesterday was 22, so we'll keep counting. So, and this is rabbinic Jews do this through Passover. I mean, like beginning during Passover through the Omer to Shavuot. So talking about you shall bring bread aside 2 loaves. So this is like the show breads. Associated with the bread, you shall bring 7 unblemished lambs. Okay, so sacrifices, you shall bring a goat, and the Cohen shall wave them. Okay, the wave offering. Very interesting situation. And you shall designate on this day a holy occasion. It shall be for you. You shall not perform any work or labor. It shall be an eternal statute for you. Right, so speaking regarding that, yeah. So, yeah, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not completely remove the corn of your field, right? So fine, you have Passover linked to Shavuot in this way, culminating with what that is. So great. And then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel in the 7th month, on the 1st of the month, it shall be a Shabbat for you. So this is what we refer to as Rosh Hashanah or Yom Teruah. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 40, it is referred to as Rosh Hashanah. We'll get into that in a different video. I'll review that more. You shall not perform any work of labor, and you shall offer up fire offering to the Lord. And then it says, but on the 10th of the 7th month, this is the Day of Atonement. So this is Yom HaKippurim, Yom Kippur. And it says, you shall offer up a fire offering to the Lord. You shall not perform any work on that very day, whereas the Day of Atonement, for you to gain atonement before the Lord. What's interesting, right? You're not supposed to perform any work, yet it says to light a fire. So, just like we talked about with Shabbat, you have to have an oral tradition to differentiate between what does that mean? If you're supposed to make fire offerings, but you're not allowed to do fire offerings, then you have to know how to define work. And that's why you need an oral tradition to understand any of this, right? So it says, you shall afflict yourselves. It doesn't even say fast, right? It says, you shall afflict yourselves. On the 9th of the month in the evening, from evening to evening, you shall observe your rest day. I think that also gives us precedence for the days starting at night, because that's when the holiday starts, is at night. It's in the Torah itself. I think some people say like, oh, how do you know the holidays start at night? Well, there it is, in the Torah. So there you go with that. And then it's discussing this festival of Sukkot on the 15th day of this 7th month. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom HaKippurim, and Sukkot all kind of, boom, boom, boom. If you're a Jew, it's, that month of Tishrei hits you hard. And, it's a holy occasion on that first day, and very similar to Pesach, 7-day period. And then it talks about on the 8th day, it shall be a holy occasion for you. And this is what is referred to as Shmini Atzeret. And this is actually the holiday that was being celebrated in Israel when October 7th happened, which is all sorts of irony and mixed emotions about that. So yeah, and it says these are God's appointed days. So Sukkot, obviously, you're in the booths, the festival booths, the huts. You do that for 7 days. So yeah, plenty of fire offerings there. These are God's appointed days that you shall designate them as holy occasions to offer up a fire offering to the, burnt offering for each day, and it describes how that works. Apart from the Sabbaths, apart from your gifts, apart from your vows. But on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the festival of the Lord in the 7-day period. The first day shall be a rest day, and the 8th day shall be a rest day. So, we do this to this very day. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of the hadar tree, date fronds, day palm fronds, a branch of the braided tree, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord for your 7-day period. So this is the lulav and the etrog, right? The hadassim and the arovos and all that fun stuff. Once again, this is rabbinic. The reason why we have this preserved is that we have this rabbinic tradition, but it's in the Torah, right? That you're supposed to do this. And rabbinic Jews have been keeping these Torah laws for the past 2,000 years and beyond. So we are the connection of these holy inspired traditions that are literally in the Torah. And you shall celebrate it for 7 days. It's an eternal statute throughout your generations. It doesn't say, oh, you get to suspend that at some point. So yeah, we still do it. We still make Sukkot to this day. We make the booths, right? So in order that your generation should know that, right, it's to commemorate the Ananei HaKavod, right, the clouds of glory that we were protected in the desert and for 40 years, and that we lived in the booths during in the Sukkot during that time. So now the Lord is speaking to Moses, saying, command the children of Israel, and they shall take you pure olive oil crushed for lighting lamps continually, and basically a statute to continue lighting the menorah, right? The candelabras that you see in the pictures of the temple, and giving frankincense alongside the stack and different spices here. Each Sabbath day you shall set it up to the Lord continuously for the children of Israel, an eternal covenant, right? Oh boy. So this is how we're going to end the Parsha now. Now the son of an Israelite woman, and he was the son of an Egyptian man, went out among the children of Israel, and they quarreled in the camp, the son of the Israelite woman and an Israelite man. I'm going to do a video more in depth on this because it's interesting, because this shows a man who was born of an Israelite woman but didn't have an Israelite father. In fact, his father was Egyptian. The Midrash says that this was actually the Egyptian man whom Moses killed, right? At the beginning of the story of Exodus, right? You can see this in the Rashi here. Fascinating, right? But what's also interesting about this is the way she is described. And the son of the Israelite woman pronounced the divine name, and he was cursed. Or he cursed for whatever reason, and they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shilomit, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. Now, in line with what we just described about the Cohen and the daughter earlier, that's why I was so fascinated with that. Notice that Shilomit is not described as being of the tribe of Dan. It's her father who is described as being of the tribe of Dan, which demonstrates that women don't inherently have a tribe in the concept of, they determine whether or not you are a Israelite, but they don't determine your tribe. So this individual here, her son, who is, the son of an Egyptian man, he didn't have a tribe, right? But his grandfather did. His maternal grandfather, Dibri, was of the tribe of Dan. So what's important for what's important is to recognize and differentiate between the fact that you have people who are born of Israelite women, and then you have people who are born of Israelite men. But if the woman's husband isn't an Israelite, then the child is still an Israelite, but not of a tribe. Now, if a man marries a woman and the woman isn't an Israelite, then the child isn't even an Israelite at all. And we can get into more detail on that in the book of Nehemiah and the book of Ezra, where that's where that is very clear. So the idea here is that this individual blasphemed, and he was stoned for being, basically they didn't know what to do, right? After he blasphemed, they placed him in the guardhouse until his sentence would be specified to him by the word of the Lord. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the blasphemer outside the camp, and all who heard his blasphemy shall lean their hands on his head, and the entire community shall stone him." So the children of Israel, you shall speak to them, saying, "Any man who blasphemes his God," I think I ran out of memory on my computer anyway. I was about done with this. So I'll just wrap up the Parsha here. Basically, we get back after the blasphemer was stoned. It speaks about if any man strikes down another human, well, he shall be put to death, right? So the punishment for murder, right? And, right, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? All those sorts of things. And obviously the controversy over whether or not that's literal, whether it's not literal, how that works. Basically, you need rabbinic tradition to understand how this actually works. And yeah, then you have the blasphemer being stoned at the end of the Parsha. So I guess in this case it was, but that was for the punishment of blasphemy within that context. So I hope that this video has been a blessing to you all. Shalom Aleichem.